All right, welcome to Chapter 4, Section number 4. Today we're going to cover questions 10 through 12 in the Guide to Reading. Things like, where did the Enlightenment begin and what did it stress? What are some of the consequences of the Enlightenment in the colonies? And what are some of the consequences of the Great Awakening? We're going to talk about that. It's a religious movement. We're going to see how that affects everything. So let's start off with the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is pretty big. Begins in Europe in the 17th century. It stresses the power of human reason and using facts and information to logically come to some sort of conclusion that's going to better society. We're going to see this in science. We're going to see it in nature when it comes to laws being created in ways to govern like the way people live, protect rights. A lot of what our Constitution and founding kind of principles are based on these ideas that were developed in the Enlightenment. Now, there's a difference in how people interpret the Enlightenment. About 50% of all males in the colonies can read, and a little bit smaller percentage of women can read, which mean that a lot of people are exposed to these enlightened ideas, but mainly it's that top, like the merchant class, lawyers, that are exposed to these complex theories. They generally have the intellect, the educational background to kind of develop and kind of comprehend some of these theories. The average colonial citizen doesn't really kind of get them in the same way. So the Enlightenment really kind of develops the leadership in the American colonies. And now the Enlightenment promotes advancement in science. So we're going to see a lot of colonial scientists. Everybody has seen Ben Franklin with the kite. Trying to figure out like some patterns in electricity. We're going to see scientists in a lot of different avenues kind of in the colonies to try to advance what's going on. We see advancements in formal education, the creation of colleges and universities, at least some colleges and universities. Harvard in the 36 is created. Yale in 1701, I believe. So we're going to see a lot of like advancements in education that kind of come from the Enlightenment. We're going to see a lot of more like logical thinking, using these facts to promote ideas, more logical thinking, kind of thinking through problems. This extends to religion. And there's kind of this idea, this shift from traditional kind of Calvinism of like you have to live this perfect life and only a select few people are kind of chosen, and you have to have this kind of volatile conversion to a more rational Christianity, which kind of says that God offers salvation to everybody. Try the best you can, live a good life, and God's going to kind of give you salvation. That's what the idea. People kind of, from this idea of rational Christianity is God's greatest gift was the ability to reason, so you can reason through problems. Now this kind of gives way to what's known as the Great Awakening. And the Great Awakening is a very religious kind of movement that takes place in the colonies during the 1700s. Really the 1730s, this kind of starts to happen. Now, the Great Awakening is this idea where these preachers kind of come and they use like a very dramatic form of preaching to spread religion to people. It's very like theatrical. They give very like extreme examples, like if you go to hell, all the horrible things that can happen and how God can and really send you to hell to punish you. And the other kind of flip side is how he kind of holds you up and kind of helps you to not see that kind of dark side, that terrible kind of eventual consequence if you're not a good person. So he's helping keep you out of that. Now this deepens a lot of people's understanding and influence of Protestant Christianity. It definitely spreads to a lot of different things. It also leads to a lot of religious division. As people kind of go to the Great Awakening, and preachers like George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards kind of deliver these very fiery sermons, a lot of people go back to their churches and they're like, hey, what about this? Offer some kind of new ideas. Some are met with some skepticism. Some see like new religions kind of branching off. The creation of kind of the formation of Baptist churches are really kind of big around this time. They're kind of a splinter of the Great Awakening. Some people kind of condemn the Great Awakening, like, and this idea of rational Christianity, like you need to do a little more, like you need to put a little more work into religion. for it to work for you. Some of the big things is there are a lot of new churches that are formed. Even on like the frontier, there are like all of these new churches that pop up. With these come a little bit of conflict. People want to know exactly what's being taught, what the religions are. All of this kind of leads, again, we kind of started this chapter talking about the colonies trying to unify. This is just another example of how many differences there really are among the different colonists with the different religions and ethnic backgrounds that we've talked about. Another thing to illustrate how different they really were. Eventually they would be forced to come together, and we will talk about that kind of in the near future. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me. If not, I will see you for the last video on Chapter 4 pretty quickly here.